Every photographer wants to create something that's highly regarded, but so many of us go about doing this in the wrong way. Social media has trained new photographers to rely on likes and engagement as ways of finding validation for what they create. Now that platforms specifically dedicated to photography are seemingly dead and buried with the rise of short-form content, it appears that there aren't a ton of avenues left for us to find that same kind of instant gratification. But honestly, that instant gratification has been leading us astray all along. The beautiful part of this is that we're now at a time where those who truly love photography and find value in it will continue to create images despite the loss of that fleeting rush that used to come from releasing work into the world on a regular basis. We'll do this in exchange for taking longer durations to make photos that have the power to stand the test of time. And this is why I strongly believe that photojournalism and documentary photography are the only ways to create truly unique work with any kind of weight going forward. To understand how to do this, I want to look at powerful documentary and photojournalism work from the past, examine what I've been learning about the process from those creating it today, and lay the groundwork for how we can take our photography to new heights by going through a similar process, and in doing so, potentially create something that is truly profound. This is How to Develop a Documentary Project. This video is created in collaboration with the Raw Society. It is brought to you by Frames Magazine. The whole point of creating this channel was to try and fill a void that I have in my own understanding of photography from the past, and fill a similar void that I've seen on YouTube in regard to real photography education that went beyond gear chat and shooting techniques. Only a handful of channels were really tapping into the kind of information that I wanted more of. Ted Forbes, Tatiana Hopper, Sean Tucker, Jamie Windsor at times, and Faisal Westcott when he would do his street study videos every so often. Since I started this journey of trying to find work that hadn't already been covered by these channels, a domino effect began to happen where more and more unbelievable work would find its way to me through the research that I did for every new video. More often than not, that work was created over long periods of time well before social media. And I think we've truly reached a tipping point where we need to make more substantial work if we want it to stand out and have an impact. To understand how to do this, I took a course from the Raw Society that was hosted by Jorge, Kayla, and Micah. Obviously, this is only the start of this journey for my understanding of all of these concepts, but from what I gather, a lot of people viewing this channel are kind of in the same spot where they want to take things further, and I want to reflect on what I learned through this course to help motivate you to maybe create something in the same kind of vein, while looking at work in the Raw Society magazine, as well as some significant bodies of work that have been created throughout a large part of photographic history. To develop a photographic project is to move beyond isolated images and into something narrative, coherent, and sustained. A project doesn't have to be tied to news or events. It can be personal, conceptual, or poetic, but it must have intention. It should reflect a consistent aesthetic and carry a message, even if that message is subtle. In this sense, the photographer becomes more of an author than an artist. The goal isn't self-expression for its own sake, but authorship. Using photography to say something about the world, not just about oneself. This is a key difference between art and documentary work. Art may exist without a reason, but documentary photography, and especially long-form projects, demand a message and perspective. Unlike photojournalism, which aims to illustrate an event with immediacy and neutrality, a documentary project can span years, be reflective, and offer a point of view rather than an opinion. A lot of the time, this idea of the story of a photo is thrown around, but single Instagram photos lack depth of narrative. They offer perception, not perspective. True perspective involves empathy, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and awareness of your own biases, which are elements that sit at the cornerstone of any documentary photography project. One of the most powerful projects I've covered to this point on the channel is Matt Black's American Geography. This project is a powerful example of long-form documentary photography that moves far beyond isolated images. Rather than focusing on breaking news or single moments, Black constructs a sustained, coherent narrative across years and thousands of miles. His work carries a consistent aesthetic, high contrast black and white, and an intentional message to expose the hidden, interconnected poverty across America. American Geography isn't about self-expression. It's about authorship. Black uses photography to say something urgent and unsettling about the world, not about himself. American Geography is also a great example of having empathy and perspective in relation to a project. His photographs aren't fleeting impressions. They're rooted in deep observation, context, and connection with the people and places he documents. He puts himself in uncomfortable situations and engages with communities that are often invisible in mainstream narratives. This allows his work to offer true perspective and a defined point of view, distinguishing it from the usual event-based photojournalism. American Geography stands as a model of intentional, narrative-driven, message-centered documentary photography that uses a heavy amount of journalism, research, and well-executed writing that take its images beyond a set of photos that simply revolve around a topic. No one's work that I know of in the documentary or photojournalism space is as extensive as Matt Black's, so it's a bit unfair to draw a direct comparison to him. One of my goals with this channel is to start finding more modern photographers creating work that is striving for that level of importance and detail. So that's why Raw Society's zine is the backbone of this video. Tamir Tamar's Walls That Breathe is an example of a well-rounded and well-developed idea. His story relates to a centuries-old wall that cuts through Istanbul, and the lives of those whose stories revolve around it. Through intimate, human-centered portraits and atmospheric scenes, Tamar captures how these walls are repurposed. People grow food, take shelter, conduct commerce, and gather at their edges, revealing the layers of social, cultural, and economic life concentrated around the silent witnesses of history. As you begin to develop your voice and approach as a photographer, it's important to ask yourself a few core questions. Are you a good photographer yet? Not just technically, but in your ability to solve problems across different situations. Do you truly understand the craft? And more importantly, are you willing to take risks? One of the biggest obstacles today is the fear of discomfort. But discomfort is often where meaningful work begins. The greats weren't afraid to be challenged, questioned, or pushed into uncertain territory. That doesn't mean you need to photograph war zones or place yourself in danger. Discomfort doesn't have to be extreme to be valuable. It might mean confronting ethical dilemmas, putting yourself in unfamiliar environments, or simply defending your choices and your work. Growth in photography, as in any art form, comes from leaning into those moments, not avoiding them. The photographers of the Farm Security Administration offer some of the clearest examples of this mindset in action. Dorothea Lange, Walker Evans, and Gordon Parks didn't just make iconic images. They leaned into discomfort, unfamiliarity, and ethical complexity to get them. Lange's Migrant Mother wasn't just about technical skill. It was about showing up, asking hard questions, and staying present in the moment of raw human vulnerability. Evans approached his subjects with restraint and formality, using that tension to portray the dignity of people often rendered invisible. And Gordon Parks, whose later FSA work like American Gothic directly confronted racial injustice, made photography a tool for truth-telling in a country that often refused to look at itself honestly. These weren't easy projects. They required sitting with discomfort, risking criticism, and stepping into lives and landscapes far outside their own. But that's where the work lives, where voice and vision sharpen, and where documentary becomes more than just observation. The project Open Doors from Sandra Hernandez leans into great or small risk. I can't know for sure, but what I see are photos created in a manner that reflect the comfort people have with her taking their photo, even if she's taking the risk of moving into their space. I would imagine it's uncomfortable to break this kind of threshold for most of us. What comes of it in Sandra's case is unique work that speaks to the lived experiences of those in Cuba. She writes, "Open Doors is an ongoing project that documents Cuba's everyday life as a way to break through misconceptions, to hear from people in their own voices, telling their stories not only about their challenges, but also their resolve to overcome them. Through this project, I seek to relate the impossible and propose a narrative focused on Cuban people themselves and the daily lives of families who've opened their doors, both literally and metaphorically, and who share the most vulnerable side of their lives. The project speaks to the kind of risk any of us could take to make connections and open doors to new photographic opportunities along the way. An opportunity I've opened recently is to build a connection with the sponsor of this video, Frames Magazine. Frames are possibly the #1 sponsor for this channel, in terms of an aligned vision through their product and what they offer subscribers. The magazine features photos and artwork from both big names and rising voices, with the overall goal of pushing its subscribers to take their photography to another level. If you join Frames, you'll receive a quarterly printed magazine, monthly digital editions, a supportive community platform, and exclusive live events featuring renowned photographers. It's abundantly clear after speaking with the founder and editor Thomas how invested he is in photography and how passionate he is about the product he and his team are building. If you're looking for a new way to more deeply engage with photography, find new photographers that you may have not have found otherwise, and support a product that is looking to take the photography community further, check out the link in the description. You can get 10% off a monthly or annual plan to frames by using the code TANK10 at checkout. The beginning of any project often starts with a vague interest, something you're curious about or drawn to. By following that instinct and allowing yourself to experiment, the story can slowly develop into something more focused and intentional. As for knowing when a project is finished, it fully depends on your context. If you're doing it for yourself, there's no need to impose strict deadlines. Just let it evolve organically. But if you're working professionally, a completed narrative needs structure, a clear beginning, middle, and end. You must be able to step back and say that the work communicates what you intended it to. A project is finished when it fully expresses the story that it set out to tell. Vietnam Inc., by Philip Jones Griffiths, is a prime example of what it looks like when a vague curiosity evolves into a focused, deeply intentional documentary project. He didn't go to Vietnam simply to cover combat. He followed a broader instinct to understand the impact of the war on ordinary people. Over time, that instinct developed into a sweeping, multi-year body of work that offered a sharp, human-centered counter-narrative to official accounts of the war. Vietnam Inc. wasn't assembled quickly or with a clear commercial deadline. It unfolded organically, shaped by a growing understanding of the country and a deepening conviction about a story he needed to tell. But the book also shows what it means to finish a project with structure and purpose. Philip didn't just accumulate images. He put them into a coherent arc, pairing photographs with sharp, politically charged captions that clarified his message. The result wasn't just a photojournalistic record, but a unified statement of authorship. When he finally published Vietnam Inc. in 1971, it was clear the work reached its full expression. The book had a beginning, middle, and end, and a point of view that couldn't be ignored. That kind of clarity only comes with long-term engagement, and the willingness to let a project grow before deciding what it really needs to say. Building strong relationships is essential to developing a meaningful photographic project, especially when access and trust are required. The most effective approach is to be honest and straightforward from the very beginning. Transparency not only helps the project take off, but also sets the foundation for a relationship that's harder to fake or backtrack on later. Always introduce yourself and engage in real conversation with people. It helps to put them at ease and opens doors to more candid, authentic moments, even if your presence feels intrusive at first. Over time, trust builds. In regions where you don't speak the language or understand the culture, try to collaborate with local photographers who can guide you. If you approach people with a genuine heart and open mind, they're often willing to help. Sincere interactions, not just access, are what allow a project to go deeper and evolve beyond surface-level documentation. Martha Cooper's Spray Nation is a textbook example of what happens when a photographer builds real trust with a community over time. Her entry into the world of New York City graffiti wasn't quick or transactional. It was rooted in years of honest, face-to-face engagement with the artists themselves. She didn't approach the graffiti scene as an outsider with a distant lens. She introduced herself, asked questions, showed genuine interest, and most importantly, returned time and time again. That consistency built relationships, and those relationships opened doors, literally and figuratively. They would have stayed closed for anyone else approaching the scene in a suspicious manner. Her presence may have initially disrupted the flow of those early illegal tagging missions, but over time, her sincerity disarmed people. The results are photographs that feel personal, alive, and unposed. Not because Cooper remained invisible, but because she was trusted. Spray Nation goes deeper than aesthetic or subculture documentation. It's the product of mutual respect, long-term access, and human connection. Cooper's work proves that meaningful documentary photography begins with showing up honestly and being invited in, not just as a photographer, but as a person. The title of Christelle Enquist's Ode to Mississippi was enough to spark my interest, because when I think of Mississippi and the experiences I've had there, it doesn't immediately stand out as a place that would provide much of a compelling narrative to latch onto. However, when I began to read the text associated with these images, it was clear that it was perfect to mention at this point in the video. Christelle writes, Lesson 1. If you show a genuine interest in people, 99% of them will want to share their stories. And everyone, I mean everyone, has a story to tell. Christelle grew up in Singapore and has now made 5 trips to Mississippi to develop this story that mostly covers how compelling basic American things can be to someone from outside of the US, and that her willingness to engage with people brings on many photographic opportunities. That willingness to engage has taught her that although the stereotypes about Mississippi would lead her to believe that she has nothing in common with these people who live there, the truth is that Mississippi, like any other place in the world, is so much more nuanced than what people assume. At the end of the day, we are all humans, and our humanity is what binds us. I personally really enjoy writing, but it might come as an afterthought to those who think of themselves strictly as photographers. I was a bit surprised how much of this lecture that I took focused on writing, but it drove home how writing can have more impact on the story than photos do in some cases. How important writing really is if you're looking to get into this field and want to give your photos more weight and context. The main kind of writing used in documentary photography and photojournalism is called new journalism, and it mainly involves using literary storytelling techniques like scene setting, character development, dialogue, and narrative arcs. Writing should hook the reader, build toward your main message, and end with impact, not a summary. To find everything that goes into that narrative arc, you'll either need to focus on a subject that you can do a lot of deep research around, or, more often, you'll need to conduct interviews. Be observant of your surroundings, and try to take note of information that wasn't readily apparent in the photos, which ends up being potentially more difficult than taking the photography itself. And thinking about it has really left me scratching my head about how I can do this kind of work in Thailand. W. Eugene Smith's Minamata is one of the clearest examples of how writing and photography can work together to create a powerful, lasting narrative. The images alone, haunting, empathetic, and deeply human, convey the gravity of the mercury poisoning crisis in Japan. But it's the writing, much of it done by his wife, Eileen Smith, that shapes the larger impact of the project. The book doesn't just present facts or show suffering. It builds a complete world around the photographs, using character development, emotional pacing, and scene setting to draw the reader in. It exemplifies the new journalism approach, immersive, literary, and intentional. Smith didn't rely on visuals alone. He lived in Minamata, gained the trust of the community, listened carefully, and gathered the kind of nuanced details that no photograph could fully express. His captions, introductions, and essays provide the emotional and political context that give the images their full weight. For anyone thinking seriously about how to do this kind of work, it's a reminder that observation and listening are just as important as composition and exposure. Smith didn't just document a crisis, he authored a story. And that story endures, not just because of what he showed, but because of how he told it. In terms of current photographers presenting incredibly well-crafted work that involves photos and writing that are equally powerful, Haura Khalid's The Awkward Pause is a very well-constructed narrative that exists in part in the 3rd issue of the Raw Society, and is in the process of being published in its full book form. This book covers life in Iraq over a full decade, from the rise of ISIS in 2014 until today. Through evocative images and personal narratives, the project explores war, love, everyday resilience, and the nuanced aftermath of conflict. How much of an impact your online presence makes in building a project like this nowadays is another thing that I hadn't truly considered, even though it makes a ton of sense in hindsight. In today's social media-driven landscape, knowing how to present yourself is crucial for giving legitimacy to your documentary projects. With traditional press outlets in decline, photojournalism now relies on 2 things: strong photography and smart strategy. Building a strong personal brand helps you gain trust and connect your work to the type of stories you want to tell. Growing an audience helps build credibility, even if that feels frustrating. Platforms like Instagram help you connect to others, YouTube opens the door to collaboration, like this one, and Substack allows you to gather a dedicated readership. It's also a place that you could develop your storytelling techniques for the documentary work you plan to produce in the long run. If you're trying to get into documentary photography or take it more seriously, hopefully this video gave you some food for thought. For full disclosure, I was not paid by the Raw Society to make this video. In fact, actually paid to take their course and make this video, because I fully support what they're doing. They practice what they preach in terms of promoting strong narrative documentary and photojournalism work. The YouTube channel works as a great source of photographic information as well, and they are becoming leaders in a section of the photographic community that I would love to see grow. The intelligence, kindness, and enthusiasm they convey through their work is the definition of a strong way to present yourself in terms of promoting this kind of agenda. And I hope their following continues to grow and thrive. It's an example of what I want to do here on this channel. My knowledge and skills are still growing, but my goal is to help others grow alongside me in any way that I can. Sponsors like Frames are helping me to do that, and I legitimately cannot imagine a sponsor that goes more hand in hand with the goals of this channel. I strongly suggest you check out their zines, as well as the Raw Society's website. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, keep developing.